on satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7.
Making headlines first at 9. War crime allegations. President Maithripala Sirisena reiterates no international force will be allowed to harm war heroes. Combating child abuse. Former President wants the National Child Protection Authority to be reorganized.
The NCPA today is dead.
JO to settle. Joint opposition says they will start a fund for Lalit and Anusha's fines with the assistance of the general public. Tamil identity. Northern Province CM says federalism proposal is not to divide the country. Making headlines from international arena. Destructive path. Hurricane Irma begins assault in Florida. Bring you news from home and across the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7. Good evening, I'm Katharina Chang. On your top story tonight, President Maithripala Sirisena reiterates that he will not let international forces bring any harm to war heroes as the government's policy-based program on safeguarding war heroes is strong. The President made these remarks at an event held in Horopatana today.
President Maithripala Sirisena visited the water purification system in the public at the Ritigahavawa temple located in Horopatana, Anuradhapura.
The government's policy-based program on safeguarding war heroes is strong. The ones who are against the government make various fake accusations. They claim that the government is hunting and bringing harm to war heroes. Recently, a retired army officer who is against the government made a statement saying that the attack launched on the disabled war heroes was the most disgusting incident he has ever seen. Who directed the war heroes are the ones who engage in politics against the government. This incident took place because some people who claim themselves as war heroes are part of political parties which are against the government. Such situations were completely created against the government. We as a government are protecting war heroes more than those so-called heroes. No matter who says what, I will not let any harm be brought to war heroes by any international community.
Meanwhile, the 50th program of the Vevak Samaga Gamak series by the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena was held today in the Kaudulla area. At the program, a 3-year-old unexpectedly ran onto the stage and approached the president.
Former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga says that the police and judiciary must take necessary action to strengthen the framework required to combat child abuse. She made these remarks at an event held in Colombo today.
The launch of the event to expedite and educate a proposal to implement a child-friendly system of legal aid in Sri Lanka was held under the auspices of former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga. The event was organized by the Child Protection Force and saw the participation of NGOs, government representatives and victims of sexual abuse. The proposal calls for the need to speed up the legal process pertaining to cases of child abuse, provide a legal representative for child abuse victims and monitor the psychological well-being of child victims. Speaking at the event, the former president questioned the role of the National Child Protection Authority.
A country, a nation that cannot protect its children should be ashamed first of itself. The NCPA today is dead. Is there anybody from the NCPA here today? Yes? Did you invite them? So you can see the interest. The police will have to have a special unit. Not only the NCPA, but the police will have to have a special unit. The judiciary, there will have to be seminars for the judiciary. All this the state will have to decide and give instructions. Then of course you have to have massive media campaigns, because without a vast majority of our population being made deeply conscious that this problem exists within our society, the final solution probably will not come. I hope the government will reorganize the NCPA so that you can also work with them. If not, there can be many organizations that can do the work.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa warns public sector employees to be careful when making decisions. The former president made this statement yesterday at the groundbreaking ceremony of the new pagoda to be built in the Namalanga Rajamahawihara temple in Kurunegala.
The nation is being destroyed, deceit is rampant, revenge, anger and hatred are being spread. When leaders display ill advice, it goes downwards. Look at what they did to Lalit Veeratunga. He distributed silk clothes. The constitution clearly states that priority would be given to Buddhism and that they would help towards its growth. If devotees do not come for sil observation because they do not have silk clothes, it is our duty to provide them with silk clothes. If you are jailed for 3 to 4 years for implementing a government policy like this, what will happen to public sector employees? They should be careful. If not, when they change ministries one day, the officials of those ministries will have to pay for their actions.
Meanwhile, the former president also met with a group of medical officers in Kurunegala last night. Speculations about some members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party joining the joint opposition was addressed after the meeting.
They've said that they would join and we are waiting. We think that the provincial council elections will be announced soon. These individuals should join prior to that. The ones who left are only returning. Who else is there? No, Rajatha Senaratne is not connected to this. Let's decide that when we reach the election. The public won't be confused. We are there for the public always. We will give them guidance.
UPFA parliamentarian Bandula Gunawardena alleges that while honest officials like Lalit Veeratunga are imprisoned, some who took state funds from the treasury and funneled them to terrorists are still at their posts. The MP made these remarks when he visited Lalit Veeratunga and Anusha Palpita at the Valikada Prison Hospital today.
UPFA parliamentarians Bandula Gunawardena, Gamini Lokuge and Sisira Jayakuri today arrived at the prison's hospital to visit former Presidential Secretary Lalit Veeratunga and former Director General of the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission Anusha Palpita.
According to the Constitution, the President's Secretary is bound to follow the orders or directions of the President. The President has been entrusted to protect and foster the Buddhisasana according to clause number 9 of the Constitution. Buddhism has 4 major parts. The State Committee appointed for the Sambuddhatva Jayanti celebrations decided to provide clothes for the 2 main categories of Buddhisasana. The President made directives to fulfill that religious task. We have decided to start a fund called the Fund for Releasing the Still-Ready Prisoners with the assistance of the general public. We will collect rupee by rupee to pay the fines that they owe. Never. It will never happen at the bond scam case. A lawyer has objected to the testimony of the main suspect before the commission. Thus, we can guess how the law functions.
Meanwhile, several politicians and civil activists expressed their views today over the sentencing of former Presidential Secretary Lalit Veeratunga and former Director General of the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission Anusha Palpita to 3 years rigorous imprisonment by the Colombo High Court. Many concerns were voiced over this judgment on various political platforms today.
After signing officers to gain personal victories and political goals, they've cast the officers away and arranged things in such a manner that only those officers have landed in court. We apologize for having to imprison innocent officers while the real offenders and thieves are enjoying freedom behind the scenes. As soon as these officers are imprisoned, they get admitted to the prison hospital. There's no need to build new prisons and there's no need to provide facilities now. However, they might need to build more prison hospitals in the future. We saw to what extent public service has been politicized in the past few days. Why did the former Secretary to the President, Lalit Weerathunga, receive a 3-year imprisonment sentence in this silk cloth case? Had he worked valiantly, this fate would not have prevailed upon him. However, the extent to which public service was dominated by political power in the past is visible in this case. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa says that Lalit Weerathunga worked upon his orders. Civil servants are not subordinates in place to follow the orders of politicians blindly. 600 million rupees is not a simple case. Those are not silk clothes, rather white clothes. The money was used for the distribution of white clothes. The officers should take responsibility for this. However, these officers are not the individuals who should be imprisoned. It's the Rajapaksas. We cannot let them hide behind the term sil and cover this offence. Distribution of silk clothes out of one's own pocket is acceptable. Citizens of this country clearly know that what both Anusha Palpita and Lalit Weerathunga did was not public service. Rather, it was the Rajapaksas whom they served. They were not punished because they did public service. They were punished because they did service to the Rajapaksas. What did they do? Was it welfare? We know clearly that at a time when a presidential election was about to be held, distributing silk clothes worth 600 million rupees is corruption, an offence and an anomaly. As per the Constitution, ministers can give an order to the Secretary, and the Secretary is bound to execute that order. Therefore, one of the 3 Rajapaksas should take responsibility instead of letting innocent individuals take the fall.
Chief Minister of the Northern Provincial Council, C.V. Vigneshwaran, says that a letter has been sent to President Maithripala Sirisena regarding the release of Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam prisoners. He made these comments responding to questions from journalists in Kandy yesterday.
Arriving in Kandy yesterday, the Chief Minister of the Northern Province visited the Bogambara prison to inspect the state of LTTE inmates imprisoned there.
I wrote to the President in this regard. Thereafter, the President has forwarded it to our Governor asking what can be done regarding the matter. I do not know what the answer was, but the Attorney General has also received a letter to conclude these cases as soon as possible. When I spoke to these inmates, they too said that they were informed about such a letter. But last week's case has been postponed until November, saying that the case cannot be closed in 2 weeks. So we have to look into the matter. There is nothing I can do. I can only talk to them. What else can I do? It is the responsibility of the government and the AG's department. Alternatively, the President should issue an order.
Now, during the same visit, Northern Province Chief Minister C.V. Vigneshwaran told India's national newspaper, The Hindu, that the Tamil minority community's demand for a federal solution to meet their political aspirations was not aimed at dividing the country. He clarified that Tamils only want their distinct identity recognized by the majority Sinhalese. Speaking further, the Chief Minister said that while their intention was not to divide the country, their call for federalism has been defined in some quarters as an effort to do so. Welcome back to the news. Chairman of the Elections Commission Mahinda Deshapriya says democracy does not mean imposing the opinion of the majority on the minority, but also considering the opinion of others. He made these remarks at the National Youth Services Centre in Maharagama yesterday.
The chairman of the Elections Commission participated in the 15th award ceremony of the Diriya Daru Pranama scholarships yesterday.
We should refrain from only discussing the opinions of the heads of our country or the opinions of the ones with power. We have to allow for the opinions of other parties as well. If we do not agree with them, we can defeat them by discussions or by an election. But we have to refrain from attacking them. Why are the party offices being damaged during elections? Since they do not have the feeling of democracy. Democracy is carrying out the majority's opinion without rendering any harm to the minority, not imposing the opinion of the majority on others.
Leader of the People's Liberation Front, Anurakumara Dissanayake, challenged the leaders of the country to explain how the country fell into a debt trap. He was speaking at the Diriya Puravasi Summit for the Colombo district held in Maharagama today.
In the recent past, the main headlines in the news were made by Ravikarna Naika. Then came Vijayadasa Rajapaksa. Now it is Lalit Veeratunga. But are these the real problems of our country? These news items, which have been fabricated by the government, are taking centre stage in our society instead of allowing our citizens to have a meaningful political discourse. We must prepare our citizens for this, as they are still not prepared to think in this manner. Our leaders talk about an economic problem, which is the debt burden of our country. This is true. There was a report published during the tenure of former Finance Minister Ravikarna Naika, which shows how debt gradually increased. In 1985, our debt was 130 billion rupees. Yet recently, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said that the country is now faced with a 10.5 trillion rupee debt. We would like to challenge all leaders, past and present, to explain to the people how they managed to get our country into this debt trap.
Meanwhile, former Minister Bassel Rajapaksa says that the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is not a party which divides votes, but is rather a party which wins votes. He made these remarks at a SLPP membership drive yesterday, held for the electoral seat of Viyaluwa in the Badulla district.
The Salawa army camp was destroyed. There was no compensation provided. When we were in the process of requesting compensation for this, there were landslides in Mawanala. The people who were affected by landslides and got displaced are living in tents. After a while, there was the Meethotamulla garbage dump incident. And then there were floods. Something bigger is done each time to make the public forget about what this government did earlier. You are not the kind that would change with the loss of power. People of Viyaluwa have united with us today. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is not a party which divides votes, rather a party which wins votes.
Let's now take a look at some other stories making news across Sri Lanka. A protest was held against Minister Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca at the Anuradhapura bus stand today. Several War Heroes organizations and area residents arrived at the main bus stand and agitated against his statement over former Army Commander Jagat Jayasuriya. A protest was staged in Kalutara town requesting justice for a family subjected to an acid attack on the 21st of August. The attack took place at the residence of the victims in Katakurund in Kalutara by an unknown group. 2 youths were arrested by the intelligence unit of the Negombo police on charges of robbery in the Putlam and Negombo areas. Police said that the perpetrators stole 1.5 million rupees worth of gold. A 50-year-old was arrested by the Special Task Force of the Batiklo Police for the possession of Kerala Ganja in Michinagar in Batiklo today. Meanwhile, 2 persons were arrested in Pugoda, Kosgama for producing illicit liquor. Equipment along with 11 barrels used for the production of alcohol was confiscated by police. Meanwhile, a body of an individual was discovered along the Periyamulla coastal belt in Negombo today. Court instructed police to place the body at the Negombo General Hospital to ascertain the identity of the victim. The eye of Hurricane Irma hit the southern islands of the U.S. state of Florida today as a Category 4 storm. The storm is expected by forecasters to pummel the low-lying keys with winds of over 200 kilometers per hour, and more than 6.3 million people were told to evacuate the state, with warnings of a storm surge that could be life-threatening to anyone in its path.
All residents of the lower Florida Keys area, which includes Key West, were ordered to leave amid fears that a storm surge of over 4 meters could hit the Coral Cay Islands, most of which are only a few feet above sea level. As the eye of the storm is expected to move north to mainland Florida, hundreds of thousands of homes in the state are reported to be without power, and some 50,000 people have taken refuge in shelters. With cities such as Tampa and St. Petersburg in the path of the storm, Irma is expected to travel northwest up Florida's Gulf Coast. Meanwhile, with at least 25 reported deaths in the Caribbean, British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson spoke from the United Kingdom's Crisis Centre in London about the UK's emergency response to the hurricane.
What we're trying to do now is to get those islands back up on their feet. They've had a terrible time, but don't forget that we've got another hurricane about to go through, Hurricane Jose. The governor of Anguilla, he was saying what an incredible morale boost it was to see British helicopters overhead yesterday, and that will continue. We will continue to bring supplies and comfort to those islands.
On Business News tonight, the US has expressed concern over unsustainable debt burden on Sri Lanka due to non-concessional loans from China. Press Trust of India reports that Acting Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asian Affairs, Alice Wells, spoke against the non-concessional loans from China taken by Sri Lanka at a congressional subcommittee hearing on South Asia yesterday. While there has been a significant percentage reduction in US aid to Sri Lanka, Wells said the US is using its tools to reinforce a message of reform and to bring Sri Lanka into a space where they too will institutionalize the principles of the Indo-Pacific freedom of navigation, transparency, non-militarization, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. For oil prices, US oil prices dropped by more than 3% on Friday to record their lowest finish in a week as domestic refineries saw a slow recovery from flooding due to Hurricane Harvey, which made landfall on the Texas coast 2 weeks ago. Brent crude followed WTI lower, but the losses for the global benchmark were more modest, a day after prices settled at their highest level since mid-April. West Texas Intermediate crude fell 3.3% to settle at $47.48 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange, while benchmark Brent crude dropped 1.3% to $53.78 a barrel, with prices up nearly 2% for the week.
Over last summer. So this is the problem that
We now join Senior Research Analyst for First Capital Holdings, Achyutan Sirirangan, for our weekly forecast.
The market was a bit slow on the local side in order to check the impact of the new Revenue Act which was passed in the Parliament on last Thursday. We believe that the current attractive valuation, that buying interest will be continued to improve while turnover levels also to be go up. The local buying interest in the retail and the high net worth buying interest is likely to increase in coming days as investor confidence goes up. The foreign interest also likely to increase and improve, resulting in a high turnover in coming weeks.
On sports news tonight, England fast bowler James Anderson returned to the top of the charts after a stunning display at Lord's against the West Indies. He is again the #1 test bowler in the latest update of the International Cricket Council rankings, claiming career best figures of 7 wickets for 42 runs in the second innings.
The 35-year-old's performances were enough to see him overtake India's left-arm spinner Ravindra Jadeja, sitting 12 points clear on top. James Anderson became the first Englishman to take 500 test wickets during the series, with England clinching a 9-wicket win at Lord's. Anderson was last ranked #1 13 months ago and is the oldest bowler to reign top of the test bowling table since Muthaiya Muralidharan in 2009.
Moving on to tennis, unseeded Sloane Stephens became only the 5th unseeded woman to win a major title in the Open era last night as she won the US Open against Madison Keys in straight sets. Just 6 weeks ago, Stephens was making her return from an 11-month layoff with a foot injury, ranked number 957 in the world, and now is the first American woman, aside from the Williams sisters, to have won a major singles since 2002.
Both women were making their Grand Slam final debuts, and their combined current world ranking of 99 was the lowest for a US Open final since the rankings began. Madison Keys, who played brilliant attacking tennis in the semi-final, was again on the front foot against Stevens, but while she managed 18 winners, also conceded 30 unforced errors to Stevens' 6. Stevens broke in the fifth game and then claimed the first set 6-3 on the half-hour mark before racing away to take the second set to love, with the final lasting only 61 minutes.
And over the news tonight, let's cross over to Sheila Fernando at the other Derana Weather Centre for the latest update.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Your temperatures for tomorrow are expected to vary between 21 and 32 degrees Celsius. As you can see, low pressure zones remain across the country over the next 24 hours. Showery conditions over the island are expected to enhance temporarily, while showers or thundershowers will occur in the western, southern, Sabaragamuwa, central and northwestern provinces. That's it from the Weather Centre tonight. Let's now take a look at your city-by-city forecast.
And before we go, we'd like to show you some aerial visuals of a series of smaller bays and beaches in Tangol, including the breathtaking Goyamboka Bay Beach, where white sands stretch for kilometers on end. Tangol was originally a small fishing village, where fishing is still the main income for many of the locals. Even after suffering grievously from the tsunami in 2004, Tangol has managed to remain one of the most breathtaking beaches in Sri Lanka. Have a pleasant evening and thank you for joining us.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.